So I will call the meeting to order at 2:04 and ask for a moment of reflection. Thank you. So I'm going to read the Indigenous Acknowledgement Statement. We would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, Region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, and the Wyandot peoples. So I know Andrea is not here, but I just wanted to say congratulations to her for her election as mayor. She's off to Toronto to deal with the Bill 23 report to Queen's Park. So we did receive regrets from her, and I understand Dorothy is likely to be late. She's at a meeting in Barrie and may be able to phone in, but is more likely to come in late, if at all. And just so you know, I decided to stay away from the in-person because I have a cold, and I don't think it's COVID. I had COVID earlier this month, but I didn't bother testing today because I thought you probably didn't want to be in close quarters with me anyway. So I'd like a motion to approve the agenda, get it on the floor to start with. I see Joanne and the seconder, Jesse. Thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? I think it's everybody. Thank you. That's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature of thereof? Okay, seeing none, move on. So we're going to move into a closed session. So I'm looking for a mover that with regard to section 16.1, subsection 4 of the Public Libraries Act, this board do now move into closed session in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters about identifiable individual labor relations. And let me see that. So we do need to have a mover and seconder for this. So may I have Gary and Joanne, all in favor? Great, thank you. So we went into closed session at 2:08. Okay, so we're back in live session. So I'd like to have a motion that the board approve the resolutions and recommendations made in closed session for public release. I see Joanne moving, seconder. I see Gary seconding, thank you. Any other discussion at this point? No, they come up again on the agenda later. So all in favor? Carried, thank you very much. There are a series of reports to be received, 8 of them. Just quickly, the action plan update for November, Craigleith Heritage Depot renovations, the CEO service update for November, 2023 BNPL holiday schedule, annual report on partnerships, board evaluation report for 2022, CEO performance appraisal, and board exit interviews. May I have a motion to receive those reports? Joanne? Seconder, please. Morris? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Previous minutes. May I put the motion on the table to approve the minutes as circulated? A mover and a seconder, please. And then we'll have discussion. Nobody wants to move the minutes? Thank you, Joanne. Seconder, please. Morris, thank you. So any corrections, adjustments to the minutes from October 20th? Seeing none, all in favor of approving them as circulated? Carried. Thank you very much. We also had a closed session at that meeting, so I need a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes. That's again Joanne. Anybody, seconder, please? Morris, thank you. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And no. Thank you. That is carried. Business arising from the minutes, and this is Sabrina's opportunity to give us an update on the budget.
So just a brief update. I know that we've deferred this for the next board. At the point that I last spoke to this table, I had said that we were asked to have a 4% cost of living increase built in. The town council will make the decisions ultimately on what that is and inform us to adjust it, but they wanted all budgets to be based on that. Since that time, they said they are going to be working with the bylaw, which is to base budgets based on the cost of living, the actual CPI index of September, which is 8.9%. So I have not adjusted the budget for 8.9% because it's not within our ability to even offer services at an 8.9% increase. And I don't believe that's ultimately what's going to happen. So it's sort of a lesson in futility for me to slash and burn the budget to rebuild it later. So I'm just leaving it at this point, and I will wait for direction from council on what the cost of living is that they are projecting for 23, and then we'll come back with that adjustment for the new board.
That will be a council decision in January sometime.
It could be in December. They may make that decision before the budget hearings. I'm not sure.
Yeah, of course, but it is the new council.
It will be the new council that will make the decision on what they're looking at wages to be. The issue is at this point, there is a bylaw that says cost of living will always be projected based on the CPI. And in previous years, council has passed resolutions not to use that. They didn't want to pass that resolution since it would be the next council's decision. And that's why they're going with the current bylaw. So I do anticipate that the new council will either repeal that bylaw or at least pass another resolution that based on being in a recession, we're not using that CPI.
Okay. Any questions on that topic? Would certainly put us behind the 8 ball if they did anything of that sort, and we would not be able to manage it internally. May I have a mover and seconder to receive discussions on the business arising in the minutes? I see Joanne and somebody to second, please. Gary, thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on to communications with the board, we see no deputation scheduled, no public present, and we've received no correspondence. So we'll move on to the strategic plan updates and action items. And I see from your report, Sabrina, that you say that we have 90% completion rate for our action plan this year. And a few of them, I know there's a few items that are still ongoing, and I saw some deferred to 2023. But there's a couple that don't have any notations beside them. I'm just wondering what's happening with those.
So typically what we do is we have the final report brought forward in January where we've closed out the year because we still have 6 weeks left to finish our completion. I do anticipate, other than the items that were listed here, that we will achieve the rest of them. We are currently at the 90%, but we expect to be higher by the end of 2022.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the action plan? Okay, well, seeing none. Shall we move on to the Craig Heritage Depot renovations?
So the depot is in the middle of the restoration project that is being funded primarily through government grant funding and is being topped up by our council. The depot is currently closed and there was a door that is being filled in that is part of the old, part of the new structure that was built in. And as a result of doing that, we had to disassemble the circulation desk and move everything out so that they could do that. So once that work is done, we'll put the desk back together and we'll reopen. The windows and doors will not be done for about 18 weeks, so spring. You'll see that the paint was started, but we ran out of the beautiful weather that was a fluke and they decided to get a good jump on it. So the green that's there is the color of what the house will be. There is a cream, it's called an almond color, that will have the top third of the building will have that, as well as bands going around the turret. So if you look at the turret, you can see that the cedar shakes are in two different patterns. So where it pulls out, there's bands that go in that cream. So they ran out of time and they won't be able to finish the painting till next year, but it has a good primer and first coat on that will be an improvement to the turret since we aren't touching that. We're not replacing any of those pieces. It is original and it was down to bare wood in many places. So it will help get us through the winter. And then they'll have to do another coat and finish that cleanup at that point. They may be working on the siding along the winter, since that is not something that it comes in the color already done. We haven't heard one way or the other, but we do know windows and doors will be in the spring. So at this point, as soon as we're able, we will reopen and then we'll stay open right through until the next stage. And there may be some days or hours where they say we have to close again for a brief period, but it's all based on the contractor schedule. So as I noted in the report, we are doing areas that are the pieces that are really changing the structure are the items that were built about 15-20 years ago. So those are not original. So the door that we removed was how there was sort of a match set of doors at the entry that went on to the back of the patio. That was not original. So it really didn't make sense having a door that there was a desk there, and there was a privacy issue, there was a security issue. So we just replaced that with a wall and we'll close that in at this point. Everywhere else, we're going to products that are not original, but will have the appearance of the original. So instead of going for another wood siding that in 15 years will again have rotted through, we are going to a product that will have a longer life, has a wood grain, and will certainly give the look of the original. Windows are going from what was replaced, again, about 20 years ago with a single pane to a good double pane. There's going to be some excavation also that will happen in the area, because when they put in the sidewalks and the planting beds, they're actually several inches above the foundation and the wood is buried. So that's why we get snakes and other fun things that come visiting us down in the collection area. So all of those will be cleaned, dug out, properly drained, and we'll have some repairs done to some of our sidewalk and walking areas, and then just pulling those planting beds back. So again, really trying to keep the spirit of the facility in its 1800s appearance, but also making sure that everything is done at a level and quality that is going to keep that building strong and standing for many, many decades to come.
Are there any plans to pave that parking lot?
It's not in this budget. It would be lovely to do that. It is one of the areas that we're always speaking about having difficulties with.
Okay.
At this point, the parking lot is not a proper size for really who parks there. So we have to make sure that when we're ready to pave it, we're also ready to give up some more of the grounds to do a appropriate parking area. So as soon as you put in lines, your lines have to show the right size for a standard parking in Ontario, and the two Class A and Class B for accessibles. So you would notice that the turning radius would have been widened at that point. So we will take up more space in off the lawn of the facility, or it will only get one row of parking. So by having it currently as the parking lot the way it is, it's not really a formal parking lot. It's more a case of Wild West. It is an issue though every year that we have to do plowing services, since the plow services have to widen up to be able to get their plow trucks in properly. So you'll notice that they'll take out all of the bumpers and they'll start pushing the snow much closer to the building, which would be what we would have in a appropriate size if we were to actually expand the parking lot in that area.
Any questions for Sabrina? No? Okay, so let's move on. The next item is the strategic pillar organizational excellence. So quickly, my report is really that I participated in the CEO evaluation. That was a couple of meetings, one with Joanne and I, and one with Sabrina, one after the other. And also did the November 8th information session for people interested in applying for the board. If I'm correct, there were 6 participants. One of them realized when we introduced the eligibility criteria that she in fact lives on the wrong side of the road and that she's in Grey Highlands and not eligible to sit on the Blue Mountains Library Board. 2 people indicated to me after the meeting that they were definitely applying. And I've spoken to one since. She was working through her application. And 3 of them didn't say anything to me about their intentions, but perhaps they did to you, Sabrina, I don't know.
I had a total of 3 that were interested in applying.
Oh. So you may have 2 of mine, or we may have 5 in all, which would be very good.
And then a number of other people have taken the information. We have it here. The packages that we gave out that night, they're available at Ellie Shore. They will, if CHD opens up in the meantime, we'll have them there as well. But I'm not anticipating that building will be open before the deadline next Wednesday. So it is available online, the same information. We just had it nicely printed, so it was a bit easier if you were wanting to thumb through some items.
And do you receive notification prior to when the call finishes on the 23rd as things come in, or do you just find out after the 23rd?
At 1 o'clock when it closes, I will meet with the town clerk sometime that afternoon, and we'll find out who has applied, how many we have. And then based on that, we will set up interviews for that Saturday and Sunday. Everybody has been notified. It's in all of the town ads. It was on, as part of our information session and in our ads, here at Blue Mountains Public Library, that we are doing those interviews. So that will help us to provide a report to council, which goes for Monday morning. So it's a very quick turnaround. Closes on Wednesday, interviews are on Saturday, possibly Sunday if we have a significant number. And then it will be the report drafted on Sunday. And at 9 a.m. council will be hearing that report.
Morris?
Laurie, I want to ask a question. It's always bothered me, what if we don't get? Town doesn't get the required number of applicants, according to our whatever number is 6 or 7. What happens?
I think they re-advertise. Do they not? Sabrina, you would know better than I.
They will re-advertise. Typically at that point, though, if they have qualified candidates, they will appoint out of that round. Council has the right to make the decision how they do it, but typically, I don't think we've had that issue here. But typically what happens is the first round of appointments will happen, and then they'll bring in whoever the last seats are. It's not ideal because it means you'll do all of your orientation and you'll be a month or two in when your next group of candidates join.
Hmm. Well, it is in fact what happened at the beginning of this term too.
Right.
Mhm.
Council does have 60 days. So certainly if it's a case where we don't have enough, I will certainly be making a presentation to council asking that they repost and hold off on appointments, because we do have 60 days from the first council meeting. So although there is a rush to get it done, there's not a rush to get it done in the first 15 days of council. It's better to wait at that point and repost for another 2 weeks and try to get a few more candidates.
Jesse?
In the experience of you or Sabrina or Morris, has this ever happened in the last, let's say, the last 5 or 10 years?
I don't know if it's ever been an issue here in the town. I know it is an issue in municipalities that the number isn't hit
You say the municipality, what do you mean?
across Ontario, other municipalities. Right. I don't know that it's happened here at the town. I know they've had quite a number of postings for other committees that they didn't fill in the last 4-year cycle. But not at the library board. We had the full complement that was available.
And if I may, in the interim, well, when all this going on to find fill it, supposing there's a decision of some kind, I'm busy with it now, but let's say there is a decision has to be made at this board level, who make that?
This board sits until the next board is appointed.
That's what I wanted you to say.
And what you're thinking at this point, Sabrina, is the council will be making its appointments on the 28th?
Correct. They may not
November.
publicly make their appointments on the 28th. It's an in-camera report. They will make their decisions, and then I'm assuming they'll do whatever checks council is doing this year for committee members.
So
So
for
that might take
example-
another week for an appointment to occur.
Okay, so for example, we at the board require police checks. So until that's completed, they may be announced, but they may not be completely eligible until that's completed. Is that
What
correct?
is it you're saying, Lori? I can't make out what you're saying.
Because we work within a vulnerable sector, we as a library board have a policy that you must complete a police, I think it's police criminal check. I'm not sure what the actual
They've
term is. You guys,
changed the vulnerable status now, so board members are no longer required to do a vulnerable sector, but they do have to do the general police check. So whether or not council is doing that on behalf of all of their committees, or if it's just for us to do, that may happen after the appointment, and then the appointment would just be assuming that the police check comes back without any issues.
So
which is the way it was done last cycle.
how do we as an outgoing board know when we are done? Like when
Certainly, when the,
Stop paying,
I didn't hear what you said, Jesse.
when they stop paying us.
You were done 4 years ago then.
certainly when the report has been accepted and they're making the announcement and they know that they have their candidates, I will inform the board when that date is. You can watch and celebrate on the live stream.
Okay. Okay, because I guess we need to know when we're off the hook and the other crowd's on. Sorry,
Celebrate.
Morris, I didn't hear that.
Never mind, I asked Rena to repeat what you said. You wanted us to celebrate, I think.
Oops. No, we're having a celebration this afternoon. At least 3 of you are, 4 of you. So that was actually still my chair's report. Do you have any other questions for me or Sabrina on that topic? Okay. The next 3 items relate to the closed session. So Sabrina, refresh my memory what we're supposed to be doing in open session about these. I know we've put wording into the key messages. Is that sufficient, or should we express some of that here and now?
That is sufficient. We do need to pass each of the reports since we didn't do those in camera. We focused on the actual closed session discussions and not the approval of the report, which will be made in open.
Okay. So I guess we need a motion then that we approve the board evaluation report, or is it a receive?
We have it that this board receive as information the report governance 2022 entitled 2022 board evaluation. So it is a receive.
We've already received the board evaluation earlier in the agenda.
Yes. So there's, yeah, we actually are correct. We don't need to do anything then.
We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do it for the CEO appraisal either, because we did the receive there. And then we also approved actions within the closed agenda earlier. So I think we probably covered off those bases.
Okay.
Okay, then that takes us to the small policy adjustment on the board exit interviews that we looked at briefly earlier. If you could pull that back up, please.
Only council. Council.
So the board shall additionally conduct exit interviews when a member resigns or at the end of term with the intention of determining improvements. I think it's for future board member experience. So may I have we did the notice of this policy coming forward at the last meeting. So now I'm looking for a mover and seconder to approve the wording of this policy. Jesse? Seconder, please. Joanne, thank you. Any discussion? People okay with the wording there? I'm watching your body language, Morris.
I just can't read the words too well. Okay, that's why I moved here. I was there.
Okay, well, so there's no suggestions for changes. Can I have all in favor? Done the mover and seconder bit already. think that's all. Everybody okay? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, the next item is discussion orientation of the incoming board. So Sabrina, can you get us started on that, please?
Certainly. So there's been quite a number of orientation dates that council is starting to schedule. I will be attending those myself. There's one that we will be presenting to council. So we'll have that date as potentially that the library board will be present as well. Whether it is a joint session for that period or if it's just the board will be in attendance, we're still working that piece out. And then the council are looking to see what their plans are for all of their committees at this point, committees and board, to be able to have some of the overview orientation. And as much as we can do together with council, we will for the NFIPA and code of conduct and all of those types of pieces that are outside of our area, but we still follow. And that will leave the orientation of the library board being a full day, assuming the day of the actual first meeting in January. And that will take more of a get to know you and opportunities to share and really look at what the next 4 years will bring versus hitting the legislated pieces, which is how we started last time. So it'll be a different way of doing it. Hopefully we'll all still be face to face in January. So that is the plan at this time, but we may continue to pivot and change as needed.
So you'll actually be organizing the orientation since there won't be a board in place to do so. So this is our opportunity to suggest some stuff to you for the new board. And I was thinking about taking a look at some of the legacy documents that we've identified and doing some highlights of those. By that point, I think people might well have read them because we did direct people to those as part of the recruitment process.
And those are currently on our website as well, up for the recruitment page, which will transition into our orientation page as we make that switch. Correct.
So that, and they could also decide not to do 10 meetings. For example, they could go for the 7 or whatever. So having that agenda, that policy might be helpful. Those are just my thoughts. You don't have to do that because actually you're in charge of that.
And then I'll also go over what the obligations are of the chair and vice chair as well, since the election will be one of the first items on the docket for the actual meeting. So the orientation will go over pieces, but then at 2 o'clock, we'll actually have, or thereabouts, we'll have a meeting. And at that point, then the election will occur for the chair and the vice chair, and then it'll be turned over.
Right, okay. Morris, I saw your hand up earlier.
No, it's fine. Nothing.
Okay. Any other suggestions for the orientation? I know we did hear in the exit interviews about the pace of orientation and not burying people in things like MPIPA right off the top. So I think this is a better approach, and especially if you're able to coordinate with the town, so we're not duplicating stuff.
Much of the town's big orientation pieces will be done before the first board meeting. Possibly before they've actually appointed the board, they start right off the bat with their orientation. So what we'll also do, since the candidates will have applied before council's orientation begins, is we can certainly recommend that candidates, regardless of being appointed at that point, are live streaming and watching what is being said at council, so they're getting those types of information. Then we would be able to do more of a highlight as opposed to hitting all of them. Because we did hope that we would be able to meet when the integrity commissioner comes in, for example, and does the presentation on, what does the integrity commission do? How do we use the integrity commissioner? What are the various codes that we need to be following? Those will have happened for council early on in their first week or two, which probably will not have a board appointment at that point.
Okay. There's something else just crossed my mind. The technology side of it, things like a town emails and stuff. Should people be bringing in their laptops or whatever to get their email set up?
We'll do that, and then fobs will need to be brought back from this board as well.
Bob in that little thing that I.
Yes, the little,
Lunch.
yes. For
Mhm.
email, it's not often that you need to use it.
By the way, Madam Chair, I just thought I'd mention, I've been told I've been enrolled with another thing for scam.
Yeah.
I didn't hear any of
If
that.
this is your last meeting, you don't need to go through the hour of annual training.
Is that
I
the,
never completed the first.
Likewise.
700 days behind or something. I know that, but we know, I tried to contact the town, it doesn't work. No. It just doesn't work, take me off this thing. And yet I hesitated to delete them because we were told not to. Yeah. But I said, no way, I delete them.
Ever spoken to a wall before now?
Okay, right.
I couldn't hear any of that exchange. Is there anything I need to know about?
No. Very secret.
Okay. I wondered if you were talking about that know before training that I got a message about. You had to complete this training by November 28th. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I did it, and I hope they don't ask me to do it again in January. I did have a question.
Jesse has his hand up also.
Okay, Jesse?
We're sort of talking about training. With respect to the incoming board. And crossed my mind that one of the problems that I experienced when I first came on the board were acronyms. I had no clue as to what most of them meant. And I'm suggesting that it shouldn't take very long, a list of acronyms be created for every new incoming board member, so that somebody will know what GLAM is, just as an example. But there are maybe 10 or 11 acronyms, and it would speed things up a great deal for new people who have had no exposure to the library board to know what some of these acronyms mean. Because I know that Sabrina uses them regularly, frequently, and commonly, and no doubt with a good, proper purpose. It saves an awful lot of writing.
And maybe distribute a copy of that to the outgoing members, so some of us can figure out what it was.
Under the heading of better late than never? Any other comments, suggestions about orientation? Seeing none, I did have a question about council orientation. I know in the past, the board, or perhaps it was Sabrina, it was you, did an orientation about the library to the incoming board. Have you talked to council at all about that or when that might be?
I have, and it is in January.
Is it before our first board meeting or after?
I believe it is before. If the board has been appointed, certainly the board will be asked to be there. Sorry, I'm just looking up to see when it is. It might actually be after the first board meeting. I've got many trainings in here and I'm not sure which one is us.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was on the agenda at some point.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, it is the one that we're at is December 15th.
Where we're presenting to the council.
Yes. So we may have a board at that point.
Okay. Good. Anything else under the topic of orientation? Okay, then let's move on to the 2023 BMPL holiday schedule. And that would be Sabrina.
It is past it.
Yeah. Oh.
All right, so I'm just going to share this. So each year in November, the board takes a look at the holiday closure based on our policy. Some days we close a bit different based on the weekends. We typically follow similar to what council is going to be doing as well. So we have 9 Ontario public holidays at this point. They are listed here. We also have a number of BMPL board designated days, some that we are closed and then some that we are just closing early. And these also align with council. So we will be closed for the Easter Sunday, which is open on Sundays at the depot. Easter Monday is listed as a board designated because it's not stat. The same thing with Civic Holiday. And then Remembrance Day is closed by the municipality. And then Christmas Eve and New Year's, we usually close a bit early, although they're Sundays, so they shouldn't be impacting as much this year.
Okay. Is this an
Short of
information
any
item?
questions, it's just a case of moving forward with that so that we can plan our annual 2023 year.
Do you need a motion to approve that?
Just receiving it as information is fine. So you've
Okay.
already done that from the beginning.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Sabrina about those dates? Seeing none, let's move on to the next report, which is the annual report on partnerships.
So this was a report that Mary, our now on mat leave, had pulled together, who is our manager of community outreach, and then Emma Barker, who is filling in many of those roles at this point, our manager of public services, had pulled together. The board had been interested in knowing who some of our partners were and functions and roles. This really is just for information to let you know the types of things that we're doing. Very operational, high level. And certainly if there are questions, I am more than willing to respond to them. It's definitely beyond a board function of governance, but as we were talking about our key supporters, there became a lot of questions about where is the governance aspect of a key supporter versus the type of partnerships that we do on a daily basis here at Ellie Shore and Craigleith Heritage Depot. So that is what this list would represent.
I'd be interested in seeing that at some point go to the new board when we start talking about key supporters and stakeholders as part of the context for who we're already connected with at the operational level. Because I think you said those are pretty much all operational, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a helpful list. Excuse me. Does anyone have any questions or comments about it? It certainly is long, which is good. That shows that we're well connected in the community. Do we have, I did look at the list, but a question has occurred to me. Do we have members of staff who are sitting on boards or committees of any of those organizations?
Certainly on working groups and committees, not boards. But we sit as our youth committee, our seniors committee. So we're an active member on many of the town committees, not necessarily all coming out of council town, but just the actual region.
And is that information included in your partnership list there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And there's probably many people that we've forgot, and we're going to keep this on our list for the year, because some groups we partner with for a very short period of time on a task or an item that may have been missed. So we'll make sure that we continue to add to that so that it is a growing list.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Sabrina on this list? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the charitable status application update. Let's you
So
again,
this one-
Sabrina.
This has been interesting. I'll just put it that way. When people talk about, you know, Dante and the 7 circles, CRA
Oh,
is your CRA application is one of those. So we did work with a lawyer, somebody who is well versed in this. And he himself has said this is the most archaic way of having to do a CRA application he's ever seen. And it is the issue with the Public Libraries Act.
Lawyers would know that.
Yes, so the Public Libraries Act is 1990. According to section 3.1 of the Public Libraries Act, the library board is a non-for-profit corporation. That is in the act. So by nature of being a public library, when council establishes us, we all are considered a non-for-profit organization. I say considered because the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and Sport does not articulate that with the Ontario Non-for-Profit Act Secretariat, who gives numbers for non-for-profit organizations. So what happens with that is CRA gets your application and they look not at the Public Libraries Act, but the Secretariat, and we are not on the list. And they say, you don't qualify because you're not a incorporated body as of yet. Pre-ONCA, Ontario Non-for-Profit Corporations Act, which actually has taken effect as of 2010, but just went through a few months back. It was put onto the books in 2010, and it took 11 years to be passed. So it is still listed as a 2010, and it is now very outdated because it's passed in the original writing of 2010. But according to ONCA, the Public Libraries Act should trump ONCA, but CRA will only look at the 11 bodies from the provinces and territories that give an incorporation number. I have worked regularly with our ministry to articulate this and to see what they can do, and there really is nothing that they can do short of what they've always done. And that is to provide a statement that the Public Libraries Act says that you are a non-for-profit. Working with the lawyer and working with the Ontario Library Service and a few other people, we have come up with a game plan. So what we did in 2021 is we, at the end of the fiscal, after we had applied and had our first rejection, we went through and did what was informed by CRA, which is to establish yourself as a real non-for-profit corporation, which means Blue Mountains Public Library was established as a non-for-profit with a number in 2021. The board of directors, as you sit today, were listed as those founding board of directors. Many of you received statements that you had to confirm through secure email to be able to do that. That put us on the list to actually be considered by CRA. The issue that we have now, which we knew was coming, is that there are technically two different Blue Mountain Public Library incorporated bodies. The one that happened in 1994 as a union library between Thornbury and Clarksburg, which later, when the town amalgamated, had a new bylaw which established us as the town of Blue Mountains Public Library, which really exists nowhere other than municipal rhetoric and the Public Libraries Act, and then the new organization, which is 2021. So what we'll be doing after council is seated and have moved through some of the big business and we've had a chance to do our orientation with them, I will be presenting a report and asking for a new bylaw that is basically saying 1994 board and 2021 board are the same board. 1994 organization and 2021 organization is the same organization. The ministry has been involved in the past, as Lori is aware, in her previous work in passing a writ for organizations. They no longer do that. And according to the ministry, it's not an issue on their part, as long as we still meet the Public Libraries Act, which we do. It's really a case of there are two business numbers that will be competing. And by council passing this resolution saying they acknowledge that in 1994 we were established, and in 2021, based on ANCA, this is what we did to get our charitable status. There are currently about 226 municipal public libraries, and 120 of them have charitable status. All of them are before ANCA came into effect and caused the kerfuffle. We are the first to go through. And what is going to be happening is we're actually working with the Ontario Library Service to present a case study on this situation and our library to the ministry to try to get the ministry on board with making some changes that may expedite this in the future. And at the very least, it will be used by the Ontario Library Service as a roadmap for any other libraries who wish to do this, including what is the charter that you should put through when you're applying for your new non-for-profit corporation? What is the resolution motion that should go to council that will bind the two organizations together? And then what are the steps that need to be done with CRA and Ontario to merge the two business numbers? So this is a pretty extensive case study that we will be the poster child moving forward. It really should have only taken 6 to 8 months, but it is the issue of one ministry and another ministry just not talking to each other. So it's a workaround. We don't see there's going to be a major issue, short of council not being willing to do this, but it's still moving, it's still going forward. And we do anticipate having a number in 23. 8 months into 23 at least, though.
Does anyone have any questions? Jesse, and then Morris.
Has any costs been worked out for the creation of a what you're looking to create is a charitable foundation type of body, am I right?
No, so we're not doing a foundation, which would be a separate body, separate board. We are actually incorporating Blue Mountains Public Library. So we are saying that us as the current organization are getting our number. Had we done a foundation, it would have been simpler because it would have been a new and separate body, but then you would have two boards who potentially have competing interests.
I understand,
Right.
but what's the next step? First of all, what's the purpose? Second of all, what's the next step?
So the purpose is for us to achieve charitable status so that we can give tax receipts and in-kind tax receipts for the donations that we receive.
So that you can give a receipt to a donor who will
Correct.
then be permitted by CRA to deduct the
Official
amount
tax
of that
receipts,
donation from that person's income.
correct,
Correct.
official tax receipts.
And if it happens to be a corporate entity who makes the donation, that corporate entity will want to have a receipt sanctioned by CRA and sanctioned by the Ontario tax authorities to deduct from income.
Correct.
So how do you get around, don't you have to get some sort of federal federal CRA stamp of approval? That's what you said.
That's what we're working on. CRA has rejected us because we don't have an Ontario non-for-profit number. We only are incorporated by the Public Libraries Act, and they don't give a number. And CRA will not take the documentation. They simply look at the Secretariat's list and you are either on it or not on it.
Do you know, or does your lawyer know whether there is any history or any other Ontario not-for-profit corporation which has achieved charitable status in the sense of being permitted to give tax deductible receipts?
There are 120 other public libraries currently are charities. They just happen to be in before the 2021 ANCA was passed.
Okay, so there's precedent.
There is precedent. There's no issue. The lawyer said this will happen. It's just now we have to get the two organizations that legally exist to be seen as one. And really, from a reality, the only people who would see it differently would be the municipality and our ministry, who know that we are established under the Public Libraries Act, because nobody else can see that. There is nothing outside of that area.
Isn't this something which council has to deal with in the sense of doing the technically legal, taking the technically legal steps?
Yes,
to
so we
change
will be,
that?
well, they don't have to change the status. They will be receiving a report in the new year that will say, it'll be a whereas statement that explains what was done with each bylaw and how the 2021 incorporation is the same organization, and that they acknowledge it's the same organization, and that's all that we need to do. It is a weird workaround, though, because none of us should have had to do this, but the Public Libraries Act just doesn't give a number, and that is really what the issue is. So it's
Morris,
been a year and a half.
Morris, you had a question?
You didn't want to hear what I just said.
Doesn't matter.
Certain things happen.
Yes, I understand.
Morris, I think you had a question.
So now, I call the question. Would it be appropriate? Let's say a year or two down the road, we've now achieved our charitable status, to start asking for annual library card fees with a deductible receipt, of course.
It's against legislation. So legislation very clearly says what you can and cannot charge for at a public library. And we cannot charge for that.
And there's families that couldn't come up with $5 for their kids.
Right.
And,
Exploring opportunities.
oh no, it would kill me.
No, so we would not be looking for any fee for service. It's against our mandate. It's against the legislation. Specifically, it's about being able to do physical and in-kind donations. So bequeaths, property, cash donations, one-time donations, small donations, large donations. And yeah, and actually that's one, like we had Hobart,
Yeah.
who had offered us an $8,000 dishwasher for the industrial dishwasher.
So
And they're looking for the charitable tax receipt.
let me just ask you to set your mind down 5 years down the road from today and put the question that, let us say, you've been able to achieve cash and in-kind donations of $100,000. If you were sitting on council, what would you say about your budget?
Based
Let it
on,
have it.
based on our MOU and based on our funding agreement, how we come up with own source funding is not part of a concern.
You don't think that would affect them at all?
Consider hospitals. They get funded by the government poorly, and so they must go and stump for funds, but that doesn't change what the government will give them.
Importantly, we also don't qualify for grants and foundation contributions. We do not qualify for most grants or foundation contributions because we're not a charity. So there are a number of foundations that will do early literacy grant programs for $5,000. As a library, there's no one more skilled to provide an early childhood learning program. But because we don't have a charitable status, they won't give us the funds.
No, I'm not speaking against the idea, don't get the wrong idea. I'm only saying if you think ahead to a different council at a different time and higher taxes, the fact that the library through its charitable connections has been able to find a source of revenue might have some effect on the members of council when they're looking at the library board budget.
Mhm,
The library
certainly.
Budget, PLA budget.
Yeah.
That's all.
Morris, did you have a question? You had your hand up earlier.
Yes, it's a long time ago, yes. Sorry, that's perfectly okay. I'd love to hear what you had to say. Very interesting. Just my simple question, what's our cost so far for all this legal advice?
Although it's taken a year and a half, our lawyer has not actually done a lot because we keep waiting for the ministry to respond. So we are still within the $2,500 retainer that we have provided.
Okay, I'll leave it to the next board to comment then on the legal costs when it happens.
I just want to throw in one comment. It happens that I incorporated my own charitable foundation, I'm going to say 40 years ago. My partner did the incorporation, and it cost more than $2,500 then.
Right.
Mhm.
Anything else on this topic? Okay,
We
so
have a
that,
snowball fight outside of the window right now.
Good.
so we have another update on banking options.
So the banking was the other one that we said that we would bring back some information. We do have limitations, as we knew, on what we can do with our finances when it comes to investment, which is why the board had moved to a GIC. At this point, what I'm asking is that the board give authorization for myself and executive to apply for and achieve a high interest savings account. Really, it's the same minimal funding as what we were getting from a GIC, but we're not locked away. That was the problem with the GIC. It goes in and you can't touch it for 2 years, 3 years. If opportunities arise that meet our stipulations on how we can invest, certainly we can look at that at another point. But at this point, we've pulled the funds out of the GIC because they matured and they're just sitting in our regular savings account which is not a high interest. And we do have the opportunity for high interest that will at least match what we had from a GIC. It's not significant. We might make, $1,000 or $1,400 in a year, but it's better than nothing.
Any questions? Morris?
Does this? Are we a lame duck board? Going to be?
After
Let me commit.
you can commit today, when we adjourn, you are still the board until the next board is appointed.
All I'm saying is, I wonder, would it be better to leave this decision to the new board?
It'll be 3 months of no interest.
So, wait a minute, you said no in whatsoever.
We're not getting any interest on our savings
Well,
account.
I mean, why don't you just put it in a high end of savings account?
I need the board to establish.
You know,
I do.
well, I mean, yes, directed or.
I need a motion that the
Yeah.
board says we
Yeah,
can
but you
establish
can
it.
Do that and pull out of that in a moment's notice.
Oh, if you make this resolution, I'll be there tomorrow.
So can I
Yes,
make a motion?
yes.
I would-
We
yeah,
actually
I would
have
like-
one. We have a
Mhm.
draft of a motion authorizing the executive to establish a high interest savings account with our bank of record.
Yeah.
So can you say who the executive is?
Charter Bank, did you say?
That is, right now we're with TD. Our executive is myself, the chair and the vice chair. We would need 2 signatures to establish that. So yourself, Lori, and Morris are our current executive and will remain our executive until the new board is appointed.
So you would need us to come in and sign something?
There will probably need to be something signed at the bank, yes.
So Joanne, did you move that motion?
I'm moving it. Yeah.
Are you
I like
pointing
that
at-
motion, yeah.
Are you
Yes.
pointing at something that I just read?
I'm having.
I don't
trouble
see what you're looking at.
Oh, this,
They're looking at the screen, sorry.
Yeah.
When we look at the screen, we're looking away from the owl.
Yes, so the wording on the screen says something like the board authorizes the executive to establish a new high interest savings account with our bank of record. Is that true?
yes,
Thank you. Okay, so Joanne, you moved that. Do we have a
Yes.
seconder, please? Just see, I think I saw. Okay, any other discussion?
If I may, as discussion, what again are the alternatives to this high interest savings account today?
A GIC.
There are types of GICs. There's cashable and non-cashable.
Yes, so a cashable, we certainly can do. The interest rate drops for a cashable. Whereas if we do a locked-in, we had a higher rate, which is what most of the high interest savings accounts are giving.
Now, what is the interest rate today on a high interest savings account versus what is the cashable interest rate of a cashable GIC?
I can't
do not
give
think we
that.
should be making a decision on this until we have that information.
Joanne?
Morris, I'm confused because you were the one who asked for this
Yes,
some months ago. And now it seems that you are balking and wanting to go back to where we were.
I'm not saying that, I'm saying, why jump into something that is, even a high interest savings account today does not pay much interest. And let's pick a figure out of the air, 1.5% for high interest. I can get, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that again. One can get a GIC cashable or non-cashable, at least 3.5 to 4.5%.
Well-
That percentage over a 3-month period is fair number of dollars.
My understanding was that Sabrina sought out financial advice about this some months ago. But unless we have a computer telling us this moment what's available,
I'm sorry, Joanne, that information is available as a phone call.
We
Not just a phone call. I'm sorry.
certainly, the
So-
GIC that we had prior, we knew what we were getting, but we were locked in. And that was why we didn't want to do it. We certainly, if you want us to continue to shop around for GICs outside of the banking industry, we're very limited on where we can go. And we, as a non-for-profit organization, are very limited on where we are allowed to invest our money.
Okay, so you tell me to what we're,
We must be with a CIDC investment group. We can work with our banks. And most of the ones that are going to be non-cashable, that are giving us, higher areas, we don't qualify for. It's the same thing with municipality. We, as the organization that we are, which is why we had been stuck with our GIC that we had at a very low rate. There are many other opportunities for investment. We just don't qualify for those with our industry.
but we would qualify with TD, with Roy Bank, with
Mhm.
CIBC.
Yes,
They're all covered under CDIC.
certainly.
So those are the ones that I'm talking about, at which you can get either directly or indirectly. Higher interest rates than I believe that, I understand.
The high interest savings account, when we were putting in 100,000 or more, is paying at the same rate as our former GIC was. But there's no stipulations short of what amount is going to be in there. It drops down if we were to start deduct.
Yeah, but why are you comparing today's GIC rates or high interest savings account rates with what we did over the last 2 or 3 years? I don't think it's any part of the argument or discussion.
That I'm confused by the argument then.
Can I jump in here, please? We did ask Sabrina to look into options for getting out of the GIC and other investment accounts, which is what she's done. By going with the high interest savings account, we maximize our opportunity in the short term. And if the new board wants to go back to a GIC, they're welcome to do so. But in the meantime, we have money sitting into a high interest account. So I would like to call the question. So I see Jesse, you want to say something? Jesse?
I'm wondering whether Joanne might be prepared to amend her motion, giving Sabrina the discretion of placing the funds in either a high interest savings account or a cashable GIC, depending upon which one yields the higher interest rate.
The high interest savings account does have the higher interest rate, which is why we didn't go into the cashable GIC. Because we had the option, I think it was 2 months ago.
But as Morris pointed out, that could change next week.
It could. 2 months ago, we looked at it and it was beneficial to pull it out of the GIC. And we wanted to say, should it be another investment opportunity, a cashable, and the cashable didn't have the same rate, which is why we held it at this point, but we're not able to open up something that's giving us that same rate. It could change tomorrow. So if you want to make it something that is an open-ended in that way, we'll continue to watch and see if there's a change.
Whether the original maker of the motion might be prepared to expand your option
Mhm.
in order to achieve the highest return.
Lori?
Morris, and then Joanne?
Okay, no, I did not make the motion. It was a recommended motion. And I just said, I just wanted to vote.
But it's true that having put your name as the mover,
Yes.
you would have to agree to what would be call it a friendly motion, if you wish to. Morris, you had your hand up.
I do suggest it would be better for our decision-making, if you like, if we knew on what basis, what interest rates are we talking about? I do hear the assumption that a GIC is offers a lower taxable GIC offers a lower interest rate than a high interest savings account.
Well,
We tend to maybe disagree with that. As you
So
know,
can I suggest that we go ahead with the friendly amendment, which I would write down as well, what we have on the board already, plus or cashable GIC depending on interest rate.
Depending on which is the higher interest rate.
Okay, depending on which is or has the higher interest rate.
I don't totally disagree with you, but
So that opens up the options, and it can be based on the actual interest rate when we go to the bank. Gary, I think I saw your hand.
Okay, so we're going with the cashable, so it doesn't, that means you can cash at any time at the rate you sign on, correct?
Whichever has the higher interest rate when I go back to the bank.
Right, and it's the same difference, like a cashable allows you to get out at the rate it was quoted at, so there's no penalty beyond.
No.
The quoted rate.
There are penalties with cashable GICs.
you pay the penalty, you pay a penalty by not getting a higher interest rate.
Right.
But not cashable for 2 years, you get that interest rate regardless, but you pay a penalty to tax back.
Yeah.
Cashable,
but you're locked in.
but you're locked in, but a cashable one, you can tax at any time, but you're not getting as high an interest rate.
Right. But you're not going in, and there's no additional penalties or fees.
And my experience has been that a GIC today, in the last little while, has been offering a much better interest rate than a high interest rate. High interest rate,
Locked in.
not locked in or not, just,
Oh,
a GIC general.
higher than.
And then a high interest savings account, or really, yes, they're chicken feed.
Can I ask a question then? Because I wouldn't support a motion with the cashable, knowing that it has a penalty, because it's a lower interest rate, has a penalty, and doesn't really achieve anything in terms of more flexibility. So we either go with the high interest, or we go back to a GIC on a term of whatever, a year maybe.
But
That would be
Laurie,
my inclination.
a cashable GIC does not entail a penalty when you cash it. You pay the penalty by not obtaining the higher interest rate.
Penalty is the lower rate.
That's right. The penalty, we're using the term penalty, but really you're not getting as high an interest.
The downside. The downside.
The downside, if you don't get as high an interest, because you don't give them your money for as long a period.
Can I go back to the original motion, see whether that carries? And if it doesn't, then we can have a discussion on an amendment. So the motion as originally put is that the board authorizes the executive to establish a new high-interest savings account with our bank of record. Mover is Joanne, seconder is Jesse. Going to call the question. All in favor of that motion?
Excuse me, you have an amendment.
No, we don't.
No?
No, I'm calling the original question.
I suggested that moving it be better.
Lori is suggesting that we,
I second.
did you hear what she said? She said, we'll vote on that, and if it fails, then we'll go.
So we have
So-
a motion on the floor. We either have to have a friendly amendment or we have to vote that down to be able to go to a new motion.
So I'm proposing we vote on the original motion authorizing the executive to establish a new high-interest savings account with our bank of record. So if that fails, we'll continue the discussion. If it passes, we're done. So all in favor? 1, 2, 3 in favor, opposed. 2 opposed, so that carries. Thank you. So that is the end of our banking stuff. So now we have to have a motion to receive the strat plan discussions as information. Mover, please. I'll move that. May I have a seconder, please? Carrie, thank you. All in favor to receive the discussions? Thank you, that's carried. Is there any other business? Seeing none. We're on to a roundtable discussion. There's a number of items listed under the library. Is there anything anyone else would like to introduce? Or discuss the items that are there?
The Christmas shopping spree, I just want to put in a push for. We have a gallery opening that will be happening on that day from 2 until 4. So we have a reception on that day. But we'll be having local vendors, crafters, artisans will be here all day from 10 until 4 selling their items. So shop local. So come on in and support some local artists if you're looking for some Christmas gifts.
Thank you. Anything else? So we have a motion to receive that roundtable information. Joanne, thank you. Seconder, please. Morris, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Key messages update. So if you could bring those back up on the screen, please. I did wonder about adding a final one, or I'm not sure where it would belong, maybe even at the top, is about the action plan that to date we've completed 94 of 105 for 90% completion rate. And you mentioned a number, or maybe you didn't, but maybe you could always say, and expect another blank number to be completed over the next few weeks for a total completion rate of whatever. So the wording I had, if you want, is we had 105 objectives in this year's action plan. "94 have been completed to date. For a success rate of 90%. Comma, another X number, you'll have to find the number, should be completed over the next 6 weeks, whatever it is, to the end of the year. And I know 5 more are deferred to next year. So is there anything, any other changes, additions to this key messages? We did add those 3 at the end in our earlier discussion. There's some formatting corrections to be made, but otherwise, are people okay with the wording? Okay. I'm like a mover and seconder to approve the release of the key messages update for November 2022. Jesse, thank you. Morris, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. So meeting dates, we know the orientation for the new board will be January 19th at 2 p.m. And that new board will then set its time of day of meetings going forward. So they could have them later in the day. We've already sort of covered that this board remains in place until such time as a new board has been appointed by council, and that Sabrina will let us know when we're off the hook, so to speak. And again, if any pressing issues arises, the chair or 2 members may call a special meeting in order to deal with business if that happens prior to the new board's appointment. And just before we adjourn, I want to thank you all for your contributions over what turned out to be four very tough years. I'd like to commend Sabrina and her staff, as well as the board, for being able to pivot to keep everything going under very difficult circumstances. And we were able to do that at both the operational and the governance levels. So thank you very much, everybody. Jesse?
Again, before we adjourn, I just want to offer my congratulations to you and to Morris for your efforts in your respective tenures as chair, which I believe were instrumental in making this a successful year, not to mention, of course, Sabrina, which goes without saying. We've evaluated Sabrina, we haven't evaluated the chairs. So thank you, Lori, and thank you, what's your name again? For all you've done for this board.
Well said.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
it's a tough job, I think.
Mhm. So unless there's anything else to be said, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 4 o'clock.